there once again. Thank you for being here with me today. And I would like to bring forth some articles and points of hope given the difficult modern world that we're in now, and in terms of the church, and that with God all things are possible, and we know that the good is always the default. So we must keep looking forward and moving towards that, what the Father has wanted for all of us. So this was on John Paul II. John Paul II was right. There is no freedom without truth. There can be no rule of law unless citizens, and especially leaders, are convinced that there is no freedom without truth. John Paul II. And this comes from Monika Jablonska of the National Catholic Register on July 4th, 2021. And here John Paul is shaking the hand of President Ronald Reagan on September 10th, 1987, when life was really good compared to now, right? So here it is. His thoughts within. Man is called to freedom and truth. Truth is given to man as an unshakable foundation. Only then will he be able to realize himself fully and even outgrow himself. There is no freedom without truth. Both are integrated phenomena, fused into one. The splendor of truth shines forth in all the works of the Creator, and in a special way in man, created in the image and likeness of God, Genesis 1:26. According to Carol Wojtyła, truth enlightens man's intelligence and shapes his freedom, leading him to know and to love the Lord. Only freedom stemming from truth begets good. Otherwise, freedom can be as a force for evil as it denigrates into license. These are my answers to two fundamental questions. What is freedom, and can freedom exist without truth? According to Aristotle, freedom is a property of the will which is realized through truth. Freedom is given to man as a task to be accomplished. The self-realization of human freedom and truth starts in the experience of the moral subject. St. Thomas Aquinas embraced the Aristotelian system of virtues: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. The good that is to be accomplished by human freedom is precisely the good of the virtues. But St. Thomas moved a step further and added to Aristotle's morality light that is offered by sacred scripture. The greatest light comes from the commandment to love God and neighbor. In this commandment, human freedom finds its complete realization. The rootedness of freedom in the truth has been also a central theme in the writings of Pope John Paul II. At the heart of his magisterial documents lies the theme of human freedom. The Pope defined it in this way: freedom consists not in doing what we like, but in having the right to do what we ought. Man is called to freedom, he said. He meant freedom based on values and ethical attitudes. Freedom also rests on four main foundations: truth, solidarity, sacrifice, and love. Solidarity. Freedom experienced in solidarity is expressed in action for the justice in the political and social fields, and directs the gaze towards the freedom of others. There is no freedom without solidarity. Sacrifice. Freedom is an extremely precious value for which a high price must be paid. It requires generosity and readiness for sacrifice. It requires vigilance and courage in the face of internal and external forces that threaten it. There is no freedom without sacrifice. Love. Leave the gates open by opening your hearts. There is no freedom without love. Karol Wojtyła knew the real price of freedom. He lived under threat of death by the Nazis and saw his most beloved Poland struggle under the communists. Therefore, he was one of the most powerful ambassadors of freedom and truth in his own country and in the entire world. In 1996, the Polish Pope appealed to those nations that are still denied the right to self-determination. Those many nations, and there are indeed many of them, in which fundamental freedoms of the individual, faith, and conscience, as political freedom, are not guaranteed. Thus, the lack of truth translated into a lack of freedom. In his first encyclical, Redemptor Homini, Pope John Paul II quoted the words of Christ about the liberating force of the truth. Then he added, "These words contain both a fundamental requirement and a warning. The requirement of an honest relationship with regard to truth as a condition for authentic freedom, and the warning to avoid every kind of illusory freedom, every superficial unilateral freedom, every freedom that fails to enter into the whole truth about man and the world." Indeed, given complementary pluralism, agnosticism, and skeptical relativism, John Paul II's warning about the crisis of freedom and truth sounds like a prophecy. He cautioned us that any departure from the truth results in freedom losing its moorings and exposing man to the violence of passion and to manipulation. The contemporary crisis of freedom is at the root a crisis of truth. The contemporary crisis of freedom is at its root a crisis of truth. In Veritatis Splendor, Evangelium Vitae, and elsewhere in his official teachings, John Paul II claimed that denying that link between freedom and truth could lead to totalitarianism. And in Memory and Identity, he explained, "The abuse of freedom provokes a reaction which takes the form of one totalitarian system or another. This is the corruption of freedom, which we have experienced in the 20th century and we are experiencing some of from today." Following Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas, and John Paul II, we repeat that there is no freedom without truth. It is clear that the linkage of human freedom and truth are of paramount significance. Therefore, understanding our philosopher's thoughts and John Paul's theology of truth and freedom within an individual, social, and political contexts help us properly respond to the challenges of today's current times. And once again, thank you for your time.